going to have Jess Alvarez and Alyssa Alvarez sing the national anthem for us, so we can all stand united. Please sing along. And then right after that, we're going to start our initial speeches, all right? So please give it up for Alyssa Alvarez and Jess Alvarez as well.
Please sing along with us. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you for everyone coming out here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Alvarez. I graduated from Hopatcong in 2018. Now go to school in Boston. I just want to read this speech to you, mainly focusing on white privilege. So, yeah. It's titled, All Lives Matter. My friend has recently lost her father to a sudden and unexpected heart attack. Met with immense grief, and in reconciling with current events, she shared with me these words. I just can't help but think of George Floyd and the fact that he has 2 kids. Despite my grief, I still have immense privilege that I never had to fear that my dad would die because of his race. I can't even begin to imagine how different it feels for his kids to have lost their father that way. And I'm so angry that people with more of varying privilege from me can't see it. With the whip of a worldwide pandemic, we have an opportunity to think and reflect on the society of which we have built. In light of this protest, and the ones across our nation, we have a chance to really look deeper into how the history that built this country built along with it a system of racism. There are practices like redlining, there is modern Jim Crow, mass incarceration, gentrification, so many more. We as a society have set people of color up to fail. And we continue to perpetuate the many forms of oppression that began in 1619 when the first slave was brought to this land. As my friend was referencing, we have an obligation to recognize our own white privilege. Have we ever worried of being denied treatment in a hospital because of our skin color? Have white women ever feared sterilization when having a C-section? White privilege is simply the societal benefits we as white people receive over people of color, strictly because of our race. This is particularly true in settings of the same political, economical, and social circumstances. But having white privilege does not mean we personally are racist. It just means that we are raised and continue to live in a society in which white privilege is taught and carried on. Just because we were raised with certain ideals does not mean we personally are at fault. What we are at fault for is not recognizing the racism in the views that we were taught. In the land of the free, we should all be free to think for ourselves. Admitting our privilege is real and that it can be a tool for change, rather than a reason to resist it, is a human obligation. Having the choice whether or not to see the white privilege we have is a display of our privilege. Before we jump to, well, I've never seen that, or I'm not like that, I have a black friend, consider the level of diversity in this town. We are a white town. A fish in water does not notice the water. At the end of the day, human lives are more important than property. One post on social media gets at this as it reads, "You keep saying it's horrible that an innocent black man was killed, but destroying property has to stop. Try saying it's horrible that property is being destroyed, but killing innocent black men has to stop." We are emphasizing the wrong part. We never want violence, but if we look at our own history, it has been white on black violence, not the other way around. When peaceful protests without violence appeared, like taking a knee, that was met with only ridicule. So what do we want? What do we expect? When people were peaceful, no justice was served. A people oppressed for centuries have a right to be angry. JFK once said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." The truth is, we do not want to admit that we have a part to play in this, that we should be taking the side of humanity. Yes, we personally did not establish racism in this country, but our ancestors did. And now we have the power to eradicate it and fix their mistakes. White privilege is a white issue and must be solved by white people. Black people are continuing to suffer from a belief that protects and benefits only us. It is our responsibility as white people to talk to other white people. It should never be on those that are oppressed to educate. It is our problem. All lives cannot matter until Black lives matter just as much as white lives. To deny that statement is to deny human rights. Trevor Noah from The Daily Show stated, "There is no right way to protest because that's what protest is. It can't be considered right by the system that it's protesting." Before we are quick to call riots destructive and against their movement, we must recognize the lens that we bring to the situation and acknowledge that protesters are being made to look bad. A tactic all too familiar in this country of painting Black characters as only criminals is extremely prominent in the news. But what about the bad of the cops? The foundation of the police force originates from the Runaway Slave Patrol. This is a group of armed white men who were responsible for capturing runaway slaves and returning them to their owners. It was a method of instilling fear in order to prevent rebellion and revolt. The police force today continues to use the same tactic of fear as this Runaway Slave Patrol. Why aren't we talking about this more? Through this protest today, we are showing that we recognize the racism in this country and that we will not stand for it any longer. We acknowledge that as white citizens, we have an obligation to educate ourselves and our white peers on racism, white privilege, and our roles in all of it. All of you here should be proud to be part of a movement that has long awaited its proper attention and fulfillment. Showing up here today proves that change is possible, that hope is powerful. We have the opportunity to put humanity back into this human world. Because at the end of the day, what do we have when we don't have humanity? Thank you, guys.
Usually, being the only Black girl in class, I would always just go with the majority. I was always confused about why people stared at me when the class talked about Kwanzaa or Black History Month. I was always wondering why we only learned about Black history in 1 month of the year when Black people have helped America grow before America was even America. It wasn't until 4th grade in Mr. Venturino's class that I felt comfortable in my own skin, having another Black kid join me in class. Shout out Deshaun. I learned just because I look different from everybody else does not make me any less important. Being in a predominantly white town, my mother has always told me that anything I want to succeed in, I have to work 10 times as hard. So with that, I became the only Black girl on the tennis team and the captain. Woo! First Black president in Hopatcong Middle School, 8th grade. And most of the time, the only Black girl in the honors and AP classes. Shout out Talia. The racial disparities in this town is not something that we are blind to. Out of the 118 students that I graduated with, only 12 of us were Black. Shout out to all my kings and queens. In my high school years, I noticed how most of my white peers were able to get away with troubles that they caused, but if I were to do something just like them, I would be looked down upon and probably be the talk of the town on social media. I saw my white friends get away with many things that black and brown kids would never be able to get away with.
That's right.
I realized how many of my peers and teachers had assumptions about me based on the color of my skin. My mentors, who were supposed to guide me, did not think I was going to excel. They expected me to be rude and always causing trouble. They expected me to come from a dysfunctional home. Although both of my parents are college graduates, have been married for 28 years and own their own church.
I don't know.
Being a minority, we had to work 10 times as hard to live in this town, in comparison to my neighbor who is a simple waitress, and the guy down the street who has never held down a job. Right now in the world, all 50 states and 18 countries are protesting the death of not just George Floyd, but Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade,
Yes.
Ahmaud Arbery, Sean Reed, and the thousands of black folks who were killed, not just by police, but by also racist vigilantes who look at us as a threat. We're protesting against the institutional racism that built this country. We're protesting against the negative stereotypes, the stigmas, and the unconscious biases that causes black people to suffer at a greater risk. We're protesting against cops getting away with murder and calling it self-defense. Stop trying to justify the murders of black people by doing with what they did with everyday activities, like buying snacks, wearing a hood, having a barbecue in a park, cosplaying, playing video games, or even sleeping in their own beds. Speak it. The racial disparities in this town is not something that we have control over. That it is something that we have the power to change. That change starts with us, the beautiful faces that are all here today. Just because we are small in numbers in Hopatcong does not mean that we are not strong together. We have the power to make any minorities in this town feel welcomed instead of threatened. We have the power to vote out any council or members of the Board of Education that do not fit our narrative. We have the power to show younger generations the difference between right and wrong, and that just being a friend to a black or brown person does not mean that you are any less prejudiced. We have the power to learn from our mistakes and change our actions for the better. We have the power to diversify the education system to learn more about the struggles and triumphs of the black community, other than the sugar-coated civil rights movement in a push textbook. The struggle for equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion continues. But we won't let those who are against us surpass us. So we should take this power that we have to our advantage, because the power does not stop. Power to the people!
As already you've seen me, my name's Fernando. Yeah, we get it. I just want to point something out really quickly before I start my speech. Look around you. We have over about maybe 200 people here. So thank you for coming out. Like, I seriously mean it. We are out here together. The Black Lives Matter movement began after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in 2013, which involved the case of the shooting of Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was a black 17-year-old boy who was described by his family as a kind and loving person. Martin had aspirations of working with airplanes after high school. He loved playing sports video games. Martin was any ordinary 17-year-old boy, like me, although I am alive and he is not. Martin was shot by George Zimmerman on the idea that he was suspicious. All Martin did was walk to a local 7-Eleven and buy Skittles for his stepbrother at home. What made Martin undoubtedly suspicious, however, was the color of his skin. With cries for help by Martin being ignored, The encounter between Zimmerman and Martin ended up deadly, with Martin's blood spewed all over the grass. After the case had been complete, Zimmerman had gone on to commit many more horrendous acts of violence and racism. He committed multiple acts of domestic abuse with his girlfriends. He had a Confederate flag as his profile picture for his Twitter account, on which he called President Obama an ignorant baboon. On this account, he also retweeted a post in which a picture of Trayvon Martin's dead body was shown with the caption, "Z-Man is a one-man army." He went on to sell the gun he fatally shot Martin with, claiming that it was an American firearm icon. As of last year, he sued the Martin family for acts of defamation that are inherently not true. This same man who has committed all these horrifying atrocities was proven innocent by our justice system. George Zimmerman isn't the only man who got away with murder by our justice system. In fact, according to the studies that map out all the cases between 2013 to 2019, in which police officers used excessive force and ended up killing an individual, 99% of officers have gotten away with no charge. The victims within these cases are remarkably a disproportionate amount of black individuals, many who happen to be unarmed. Today we have gathered here at Modick Park in support of the movement of BLM, as well as we remember the many lives that have been taken away due to the systemic racism within our justice system that reinforces racist behaviors for the police across America, like that of Derek Chauvin, who kneed on George Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes as he cried for help and aid and for his right to live. Today, we as a united coalition call for the end of the systemic racism within our justice system as we pressurize our local, state, and federal government to apply changes. We must acknowledge that the change can come by our rights to vote for policies that are for basic human rights and not for those that ultimately promote white supremacy. My good friend Sean and I decided to commit to this protest because unfortunately, racism and ignorance fluctuates within this town to a disgusting degree. Here's a list, by the way. To the people who wanted to shut us down because you deemed that this protest would make you and many others feel uncomfortable, shame on you. You are you have no right to shut our voices down, especially when we are calling for equal human rights for our brothers and sisters within the black community. To the Facebook users who tried to generate fear to the public, inciting that this protest would end up in a riot, shame on you. We remarked several times that this protest would be peaceful. In fact, we remarked that violence was not allowed in all of our posts, yet you ignored it. To the people who try to say that this protest was organized by a hate group / Antifa, shame on you! We are a group of teenagers who seek love and equality for members of the black community. To those who willingly remain silent in order to ignore the pain that is felt across the nation and move on with your personal lives, shame on you! We are talking about basic human rights for black people, yet you don't want to get yourself involved because you don't want to get political? We're not talking about a mere political issue here, we're talking about a humanitarian crisis. Right. This one's the best one, by the way. To those who try to spread the rumor that we are busing people from the Bronx and Hackensack, yeah, I know, right? Who had bad intentions in order to create fear of coming to our protest and what they're going to burn down the town hall. Shame on you! Not only were your rumors false, but they were despicable in nature. Why the hell would someone from the Bronx come to Hopatcong, New Jersey? What are they going to steal? Yeah, do they even know what Hopatcong is? Although these attempts have been made, they have all failed. As you can see, many of you have come out here to support a human rights cause. To all of you, thank you.